The latest on-track event was towards the T-57 Heavy, where they went out and nerfed some tier 9 American Heavy now, which was the T-54E1, but the T-57 Heavy is the ultimate top dog, the tier 10 tank that the T-54E1 leads to. And if you've seen my video on the T-54E1, you know that they basically changed it from a medium to a heavy tank, and in doing so they made a bad vehicle even worse. So this was not a good idea from Wargaming, in my personal opinion, since the tank was pretty bad anyway, and making it slower and basically changing not a lot else was, yeah, just not a good idea from Wargaming. So without further ado, we have the top tier one, and to see whether the grind of the T-54E1 is actually worth getting. And the short answer of the T-57 Heavy is yes, this tank is really, really fun to play. This replay in particular is going to show you a high damage game. The next one is going to show you a similarly high damage game, but a bit more of an assistance as well, and on a different kind of matchup and team as well. So, 57 Heavy, what is special about this vehicle? Well, it has the 4-shot autoloader with 400 alpha damage per shell. Obviously, you mathematicians out there, that's 1600 total damage you can deal. It reloads in approximately 20 seconds, so you can deal 4,800 damage per minute if you do indeed have all of the perks, the equipment, and everything that's going to increase your reload, etc. So yes, it is still a brilliant vehicle in the game, and I've always enjoyed playing it, hence why we went out and actually 3-marked this thing. Maybe I could go for 100% at some point, but that would definitely be it later on down the line once we've actually picked up all of the tier 10s in the game and I have a little bit more time to just play whatever vehicle I want rather than the vehicles that I need to get within the game. But so far, 943 damage done, which for the most part is not particularly enthralling. It's not that much damage, and of course when you are nearly halfway through the game at this point, maybe potentially, yeah, you certainly would be expecting more damage within this. But luckily for us, there's a Jagdtiger and a T-28 on the enemy team who are sat in front of us. We placed 2 rounds into the Jagdtiger. I could go for the third one, but I'm thinking I have no idea if my team are actually going to support me. I take the reload instead. I don't want to take a hit from the Jagdtiger because I could get pumped, and instead I'm going to take the full reload and go around and try and deal with the T-28 and of course the Jagdtiger directly afterwards, or vice versa, whichever one comes first. Now, I do something that you probably shouldn't just not do in World of Tanks, and that is share the damage between both vehicles. If I could have taken out the T-28, that would have been ideal. If I could have taken out the Jagdtiger, that would also have been ideal. But sharing 2 rounds between each of them, yeah, that's definitely not the best scenario you can do if you want to increase the chances of you surviving and reducing the amount of damage you could potentially take in the game. Because remember, much like the T-54E1, the T-57 Heavy has basically not a lot of armor. Anyone that knows anything about the T-57 Heavy will shoot at the cheeks of the turret, and the cheeks, the kind of little sandbaggy, well, they're not even sandbaggy, but basically like the bulbous bit on the left and right of the turret as you're looking at it, just below the gun. So that's the area that you want to be firing at. Of course, most of you may already know that, but it's just there as a kind of, I guess, an easy way to pen this vehicle if you've never really come across it, or if you're coming across it for the first time. Yeah, hopefully you'll be able to basically pen it. But if that is not something that you can do, if you can't hit the turret for some unbeknownst reason, then yeah, you can hit the hull armor, and you want to be aiming at the left and right of the lower plate. Of course, the lower plate being the very, very bottom of the hull armor. And so yeah, you can do that. It comes out really, really nicely, and you can hopefully come away with the victory. Now, one thing that I want to showcase here on Himmelsdorf is this position right here. Often you'll get this sort of position where the enemy team kind of push up a little bit too aggressively, and they'll go back into their cap circle, and this position allows you to get shots onto them as they retreat, or potentially if they're moving forward to try and cap your base, and you can also get line of fire into the cap circle from this position. Remember, if there's enemy artillery in the team, then they can hit you from here, and it's a really easy shot for them to actually do that, so you have to be a little bit aware when it comes to artillery pieces in this game. But at this point in the game, I'm thinking, you know what, this is not a guaranteed victory like I thought it was going to be when we were multiple tanks up, and that's because the E100's on a decent chunk of hit points. I also know that this other heavy tank is somewhere near me. Now, I'm fairly confident in progressing because I know I have the back chat support, which is nice. I confirm that he does indeed have the reload as well. And at this point, I'm just trying to bait the shot from the Type 5. I don't want to get penned by him, and we certainly can. We're, of course, using the heat rounds against these super heavy tanks in the E100 and, of course, the Type 5, just so that we can guarantee pen and get most damage that we can. But we ended up shooting at the weak point of the Type 5, being the kind of lower, or the hull armour, but the slanted area, whereby if they try and angle to avoid any of the shells, then they end up actually hitting that kind of plate, which makes it easy to be able to pen. Now, I just YOLO this E100 because, to be honest with you, we're going to be able to take him out. It's me and a bat chat, both of us, of course, autoloaders. I'm trying to go for the lower plate, but we only managed to pen 3. We would have been able to finish him off if we did land all 4, but it doesn't really matter because we still had a fantastic result, and one that I'm pretty sure anyone would be happy with having in World of Tanks. 7,420 damage done and 1,500 base experience. It is not the highest damage game I have had in the 57 Heavy. That would go to about 9,500 damage and I think 11 kills or something in that region. I think we had a Pools medal with this vehicle, but it is one that is super good. If you can know how to play autoloaders, if you know how to poke around corners, deal your damage, if you can be super accurate, and of course if you can spend a little bit of money on premium rounds, then you can basically go through the front of most tier 10 heavies, and of course you can take only one in return, and most of the time you will be taking a hit if you do pull around a corner due to the armour. But let's jump into this next gameplay and see a different kind of play style that you can use with the 57. So jumping straight into the next replay, we have of course got Cliff. Now Cliff is a map that I see a lot of people play badly, and the reason I've actually put this map in here is that this showcases what happens when you don't take the hill on Cliff, and it's going to showcase how easy the farm is when you don't manage to do that. And the scenario that occurs within this game is essentially, spoiler alert, that the enemy team push essentially the valley area or the dip area, whatever you want to call it, the basically the left hand side of the map, or the western side of the map, and they pretty much all camp in base, bar a couple of vehicles that you're going to see here. Now the AMX 13105 does a fairly smart play. Moving into the central area of the map is not necessarily something that you should not do within this game, because you can take advantage of it, you can get side shots on a lot of the heavies that might be up here, but the one thing that it does rely on is that your team are somewhere, at least within the game, to be able to support you in some degree. You don't need a whole lot of support, but you definitely need some. Now what we do here is we start shutting down the AMX 1390, 2 shots into him, and then the third one of course does indeed track the AMX and we finish him off. So it's super nice to get him out of the game at the beginning. His friendly AMX 13105, the top tier version of the 1390 of course, decides to come over and make the same mistake for some reason, and given the reload speed of this vehicle being very nice, you're able to shut him down at the same time as the 1390, which is really nice, and we've picked up nearly 1,000 damage. And the 57 Heavy is one of those that suddenly you can go from having like 0 damage to like 5,000 damage within a very short period of time, because of the damage per minute that you have, and not just the damage per minute but the effective damage per minute that you have with a vehicle like this, because you can usually derp all of 3 or all 4 of your shells, or however many you have left in the magazine, at your opponents and come away with a fantastic result. So the key things that I think people maybe don't play the 57 Heavy right, or the 50B, because they're very, very similar vehicles, is that they don't try and go for tracking shells. A lot of people will avoid going for the tracking shot, and actually it can come away and be very, very useful for you, because not only are you kind of able to deal damage by getting actual damage, but you can consistently keep someone locked in place so that you can then progress with the game how you see fit. And what I mean by that is that you can maybe lock someone's track down, they're going to then repair it, but because of the 2-second intra-clip reload that this vehicle has, which is essentially the delay between firing your first shell and being able to fire your second, and then your third and your fourth, and you can actually fully unload the T57 Heavy in approximately 6 seconds, dependent on your crew loadout. It might be slightly lower, it might be slightly higher, but either way, 6 seconds to deal 1600 damage is perfect, and it allows you to farm up so many opponents. You're seeing here the use of the reload speed and also the accuracy of the 57 Heavy to be able to hit the E5 in the side. And now we're waiting for the full reload. We're going to go for potentially the tracking shot or the engine, or just somewhere where we can reliably hit him. Now we hit the tracks here. Unfortunately we don't manage to pen. Ideally you want to be tracking and penning, but either way we pick up 1200 damage right there, which is essentially getting hit by an FE 4005, except this is far more reliable and a lot more flexible. And that's one thing that maybe we haven't talked about in this replay, is the flexibility of the T57 Heavy is really, really good. It's super mobile, it has kind of everything that you'd need, whilst also remaining a very, very competitive top tier heavy tank. And that's really where I think my love for the 57 Heavy comes in, because it can save you in so many situations, especially if you're a solo player and you're thinking, you know what, I'm really sick of these people that just keep YOLOing me, or maybe they just have no idea what they're doing in World of Tanks. They just keep derping you, or someone just comes at you. You can actually shut them down really nicely in the 57 Heavy, and you can say, absolutely not, are you going to be taking me out? And you remove 1600 hit points of their health, and they may do 400 back to you depending on what vehicle it is. But yeah, a really, really nice result on Cliff. Of course, the enemy team got absolutely stomped because no one went up on the hill area, which you should always do on Cliff if possible, if you're playing a heavy tank especially, and if you're playing a medium, I would highly recommend it as well. But we pick up 5400 damage and 800 assistance, 6200 total combined damage within that replay. And of course, really, really nice showing from both of these games. What's that, like 12,000 combined damage in 2 games. Yeah, really, really do enjoy playing the 57 Heavy, and hopefully you guys, if you can stand grinding through the T54A1, which is disgusting right now, and I really hope Wargaming do something about it, give it back its mobility that it once had, because to be honest it did not need the mobility nerf, and they gave it some increased turret armor, which doesn't mean absolutely anything because the turret armor was terrible in the first place. But regardless, that's the rant over on the 54A1. The 57 Heavy absolutely is a must. You must try out in your garage at some point in World of Tanks console, and hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you're interested in seeing more tier 10 tank reviews, if you're interested in seeing tier 9, tier 8, any of the brand new tanks that come into the game, then feel free to check out some of the other videos that we've done recently on the channel, or the gameplay and tanks reviews playlist that's on screen right now. Other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and I hope you join me back in tomorrow's video. Goodbye.